Good afternoon. My name is Susan Doyle and I will be your facilitator today on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. I would like to welcome you to Lean Construction Ireland's 37th webinar, the topic of which is Facilities in Higher Education, Challenges and Opportunities. If you have a question, please type it in the question box and we will ask Amar in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The speaker for today is Amar Abdel-Azim, Chairperson of Lean in Public Sector. Amar is a pioneer in the area of facilities management in higher education. He spent most of his professional career leading major capital projects at Michigan State University, with 20+ years at the main campus in East Lansing, Michigan. He has leading innovative lean practice in campus facilities planning and design, including 2 major integrated project delivery projects on MSU main campus. His professional achievements include building the American University of Sharjah, a brand new campus from scratch at UAE. Founded in 1997, AUS is a private comprehensive university that has 5 colleges residing on a beautiful 330-acre area located in the city of Sharjah, United Arab Emirates. AUS was ranked as the top private university in the Gulf area by Forbes Middle East. Amar served as the Senior Executive for Capital Projects at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, leading a capital construction program. The main campus development involved $400 million state-of-the-art interdisciplinary research center and world-class performing arts center and related infrastructure. He was the director of physical plant of the newly established American University of Sharjah, where he started the campus from scratch. The campus physical plant, which reflects a distinctive Arabic architectural style, is comprised of 90 administrative, classroom, athletic, recreational, and residential buildings totaling over 2.3 million square feet. Amar holds a bachelor degree in architecture and a master degree in urban planning. He is a certified educational facilities professional by APPA. He is the chairperson of Lean in Public Service, an international organization that promotes lean principles and applications in public sector agencies worldwide. I will now pass you over to Amar to start his presentation.
Thank you, Susan. Good morning, everybody. Really delighted to have you all joining us in this session, talk about facilities in higher education. Amar Abdel-Azim, here welcoming you today on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland and Lean in Public Sector organizations. Because of the limited time that we have together today, my goal is to try to cover some agenda items with you today. The first one is going to be just looking at some of the challenges that we're facing campus facilities, tailoring our efforts and our plans to the changes that's taking place. Unlocking some lean approaches, looking at how we can cut waste and add a little bit value what we're doing, engaging everybody in the organization. And also we cannot leave the current pandemic impact on our campuses, which has been huge and has been really a challenge for a lot of the universities. Then we'll finish with looking at some budget challenges and opportunities that's facing higher education in general. And because of the diversity of the group that's with us today, I'd like to leave a little bit more room for questions and answers at the end. I usually like to start with this quote from Darwin. If you look at it, that talks about that the strongest species that survives are not the strongest nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to changes. This particular quote applies very much to our businesses, all of our businesses, regardless what that is. If you look at the past decade, just the past 10 years, not 30 years, not 50 years, about the huge leaps and changes in the business models in many different places that changes the way that we conduct ourselves and conduct our businesses. You would be surprised. I'd like to give some couple of examples, just give you an idea about some of these business models changes. In 2007, 5 phone companies dominated the 90% of the industry global profit. Less than 10 years, iPhone alone generated 92% of the world profits. So you can imagine the impact on the whole industry and the competition and what we're providing the users, the end users with that. Another good example is looking at is Airbnb. Marriott, that's a great, huge company, started 9 years ago with about 760 rooms in 87 countries. In 2008, Airbnb had 3 million rooms spread over 191 countries. And if you look at this, Airbnb, their investment was linking those who need service with those who can provide it without spending a lot of money on brick and mortar. It's just a huge different way of looking at the business model. Another example is Uber versus the traditional car rentals or business or taxi businesses. Uber started 2009 in San Francisco. Its revenues after 7 years was $6 billion. You can imagine the impact that on the car rental and the taxi businesses. And of course, we cannot forget the huge success that Amazon have done, the way that we do shopping, the businesses, and impacted a lot of areas in businesses. And some would wonder how they were able to reach that level of success. That was explained by the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, who started this business from his own garage. His statement here kind of summarized the huge success they had. He's saying the focus on customers as opposed to just worry about the competitors. This is really very important in our businesses today. And in higher education, facilities higher educations, we're not really immune of changes, of the huge changes that has taken place. And I would consider that the most challenging change that we had in our business is we changed the way that we deliver education. The relationship between an instructor and a student inside the classrooms, outside the classrooms, how they take the exam, how they get the results, how they can go back and review a session, how they can interface and interact with other students. All of this has changed. And of course, had a huge impact on our campuses and the way that we planned it, the way we designed it, the way we operate it. We take a look at the classrooms and the research labs. Here is a good example of a project we've done in Michigan State University. This is a research lab that's based on the concept of open lab. And instead of having research in separate areas, here we put the researchers together in one big lab with a modular that they can work together. They rub elbows, they talk about ideas, they think about ideas, they share expensive equipments together, they talk about supplies, kind of force them to really be in touch with each other on a daily basis and what they do and what they be doing next, which has been very, very successful way of looking on arranging our research. And then when we look at classrooms, the most traditional one is this one here, where the instructor would be up front working on a whiteboard or blackboard, projector, or PowerPoint presentations, and the students would be lined up in rows as you see it here. Not a lot of interactions of the students, except in a little modification where 2 of those rows would be on the same platform where students can turn around and work with the row behind them. So stuff like that is just very limited when it comes down to interaction of the students. This is more of a receiving mode. This is more of a modern, it looks at the classrooms where it looks like a U shape with the instructor in the middle of the classrooms. Students pretty much facing each other and have more interaction, more interface with each other. Then the most recent one is the active learning, in which you have separate tables or separate groups working on parts of the projects or separate projects. and they always can go back and share their ideas, and they share what they have with the rest of the classrooms through the multimedia that we have throughout the classrooms here. Very different approach of how the students interact with each other, learn from each other, working in teams, and all of that stuff. The more recent one, this is not, hasn't been recent really, actually. We have virtual learning has been going on for a long time. But of course, the pandemic and what happened there, this became really the way to go to deal with the current situation. Virtual classrooms here pretty much has two different styles of delivering education here. Something's called synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning meaning that the classrooms would be scheduled in a specific date and time, and students are expected to join the class at the beginning to attend the session. Asynchronous learning, where materials are being uploaded to internet and students have access to it, usually in a specific time or a certain time, to be able to get what they need or upload what they need and all of that stuff. So that's a very important difference between both, and both are being used. We, of course, in this situation, you have live audio video support. This is really the basic communication. The session will be recorded so students can go back and listen to the session and be able to review it. Sharing screens and other materials, videos, clips, and all of that stuff. They have whiteboard where they can write stuff and have it shared with everybody. Raising hand, it's important. You can imagine when you're doing a classroom. I have a friend at Michigan State University, a professor, who have 300 students in a classroom. You can imagine if you don't have an option of raising your hand, it will be a chaotic in communication. If somebody wants to have a question or want to communicate something with the rest of the team. This particular way of teaching requires really a heavy load of live technical support. You need to have that. Some of the software might have glitches. You might have glitches with the internet and all of that stuff. Having somebody live to be able to seek help, support, and all of that has been taking place. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more about the impact of pandemic, but I just wanted to tell you that this has been taking place in many universities, not those who just have online learning, but many other universities have been able to do that, to be able to communicate and teach remotely with students all over the world. This particular way of teaching, it really kind of put a demand on a different space requirement on campus, different from a classroom or an office. You know, what you need to do, what we need to have there is that the students will have a place called touchdown space when they come and visit campus to meet with their instructor or take an exam or work on an experiment and all of that stuff. Not necessarily an entire office, just a place that they can have their computers and make a phone call and all of that stuff. A lot of universities started building what they call it visitor centers. You know, for those who come to campus for a week, 2 or 3 days, just to be able to sit down and communicate with their instructor and be on campus for a couple of days. The meaning of a library has changed tremendously. I remember when I used to go to the library way back and try to grab my references and follow all the colored lines to get to the shelf with my references. Now students have the whole world under their fingertips, staying in their own dorms. It's just a huge change. So the meaning of a library has changed. You know, I've seen a lot of spaces in big libraries that turn many rooms in different size, formal and informal, for students, teams to meet and study and be able to take advantage of that group learning, working together, while helping if they need any search or any specific piece of information. So the emphasis has been on students meeting and taking that place in the library. Another challenge that we have many new educational themes. If you heard about the idea of interdisciplinary, in which students, researchers will be looking at a particular area from different angles. They all can come together, and each one would look at it from their areas from a different eye and different angles, and be able to share what they're working on together. This interdisciplinary requires a lot of collaboration, requires co-locations, working together, having a lot of these formal and informal places where they can benefit from the interactions and talking about what they're working on together. Another concept is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, where there's a lot of emphasis on these areas. They help students in advancing, whether in their education or when they graduate and get a job. There have been a lot of emphasis in a lot of universities about these areas. Some would add art to this, and some would add other areas. But the whole concept here is you're providing new facilities that would help students to focus on those particular areas from different backgrounds. That's it's been another challenge. And the most important part that if you notice, the way that way of delivering education has been taking place has been the emphasis on students' interaction interface together. The students learn from one another. They learn from the experience of others. So that has been a huge important impact on how we organize that and how we provide the spaces that help with that. The shot here that you see that shows an atrium inside the new pavilion, business college pavilion at Michigan State University, which is a project that opened its door last year. And as you see here, the emphasis is providing these step stairs. Students can sit there and work on their laptops and talk and have a lot of social interactions in here. In addition to that, they have a lot of meeting rooms, different sizes of meeting rooms that allow students to meet, interact, or interface together on a formal and informal basis. In this particular building, there is no faculty offices. All what it is just students-based, students core support for what the students do, and if they have interviews with vendors coming from outside and all of that stuff. So as you see it here, they recognizing that students meeting each other and working together, interfacing, run to each other is an important part of how you build your facilities. Another one here, we'll talk about a little bit more details about dining halls. The dining halls, we had huge initiatives here at Michigan State University that talked about that allowed huge improvement of dining halls that went beyond just eating food. That had a lot of impact on how the students can meet and interact and enjoy that meeting together. And we'll talk a little bit more details about that. I just talk about how it's important for students to get together. On any campus, especially the older ones, older buildings, they carry a lot of heritage, a lot of history that is important to kind of keep that and maintain it, restore it, and bring it as more functional. Of course, these buildings were built way back, and some of them would have challenges, especially in the area of accessibility areas of different codes, and also making it functional for today's way of learning and teaching and functioning on a campus. An older building on campus that was vacant for about 14 years or so, and we had huge alterations. And actually, it turned out to be a great one here. And instead, of course, the main thing is accessibility. Usually, older buildings would have a lot of steps and that can be a challenge for providing accessibility. Here in this particular project, we have a ramp that's stuck around a plaza. A plaza would be like a social space for students, but allowed to have this ramp to be hidden behind this plaza to get to the level for the building. That without the risk of plopping a huge ramp right next to a historical building like that. So it kind of look at it. The looks and feel and the finishes, the materials, the furniture, the lighting is a huge part of these alterations to try to restore from inside and outside as you see it here. Another thing that's important for us on campus is taking care of our outdoor space. I'm sure any campus main goal is to provide quality education. But education is not limited only to classrooms or labs. We learn outside as much as we learn inside. And this is important, that we make sure that these outside spaces are the glue that kind of brings these buildings together and provide that experience for students. It's funny that years after we leave schools, we remember more about what we have done outside more than what we did inside the classrooms. So enhancing that experience that stays with us the rest of our lives is so important. You always remember when you used to have meetings with your friends or play basketball or eat or sit down when the sun comes out and the weather is beautiful out there. So having this becomes a big, important part of what we do in our campus planning. And we have other buildings that were built, many of them in 50s, 60s, and early 70s, that they were, the campuses were growing very fast. And a lot of buildings that time did not have a lot of natural lights. Was built for a specific function. You know, it's important that when we do that is to look at the bigger picture of what we're trying to do with these buildings, how this can fit in the bigger scheme of our campuses and provide a little bit more modern looks and feel and helps the students in what they do on campus and the functions of these buildings. For example, we have the older dorms built in the 50s. This is a typical floor plan. As you see it here, that would focus only on sleep. Not a lot of the spaces in here that provides that kind of social interaction and all of that stuff. It's important that they come back and to try to help that cause. Privacy was lacking, the accessibility to barrier free, all of that stuff. It's been has been a challenge with some of these buildings. Trying to turn that around and have a focus on a social life and improving the space, a quality construction, a quality materials and looks and spaces that allow students to interface and interact is really important. Bringing lights, the sound spaces, it's so important, and they help turning around some of these deficiencies that were built in when the buildings were built way back. Also looking at how you use your building. You might have the lower part of it being used for public. A lot of people can come and attend a class or go into a dining hall or something like that. And also you might have a semi-access in other floors, but you need to kind of preserve the privacy for those who live in that dorm, you know, and making sure that they're the only ones that can access these floors. You know, the way in the looks and the feel and finishes, the furniture, lighting, all of that is important to be part of some of these renovation of all the places. Then we come in looking at dining halls, and it's important to tell you that a nice experience that we went through here at Michigan State University had a master plan for dining halls. This is a look at older dining hall as you see it here, bunch of tables and seats, serving food from that hot steamed tables. This particular building was facing the river. You would not even be able to see or enjoy that. And this is after the renovations. The dining hall was divided into different looks and feel, as if you go into different restaurants. You know, the looks of the space, the furniture, the tables, the lighting, the colors, you know, all of that stuff that kind of helps the students to come and visit and enjoy this place, coming into many times. And you will not be able to, you will not have the same food and sit in the same place. It's a different experience every time they come in, which is really going to be being up to the experience. But also, it is important also that in universities, we have always had design and construction standards. I always consider universities are really a great player when it comes down raising the bar a little bit, challenging our consultants and contractors to build something that is unique. Because for the university, new buildings and additions and huge additions, all of that, it is important as a recruitment tools. You know, people come and feel the pride of being part of that campus, and people that especially with the new facilities and the momentum that new facilities can bring. So design and construction standards are important to kind of set up the tone of what you expect. It's your communication with your consultants and contractors and keep track. What is it you can maintain and you can operate? You know, the issue of sustainability has been a big, huge on any campus, and it's not just the concept. It's a way of teaching our students. Our students, when they understand, you know, what it means sustainability in their lives, you know, how they can practice recycling in their own dorms, and how this can be applied for the rest of their lives. Look at energy efficiency and how can we improve that and help with that, and what type of lighting or sensors that can help us with all of that stuff. Environmental issues is huge. How can we make sure that we designing and buying materials and systems that can help this whole environmental issues, you know, that we face on campus. You know, looking at materials and systems that can help providing natural lights, but in the same time, taking care of this whole concept of how can we watch out for the energy savings and provide better quality, you know, for the buildings that we built in here. Another area that we have in our campuses is the construction procurement. Building a new building on campus is usually a unique, and it is something that we usually work on to make sure that during planning, designing, and construction, that we are communicating with all stakeholders. The nature of any campus is you have many stakeholders that you need to reach out and make sure that they are part of what you plan and design and construct. It is important that they become a help and a tool that can give the requirements and give their needs together to the planning team and the designing team and construction team. And also sharing what's happening with a lot of the stakeholders on campus and help them in buying in at what's being designed and what's being constructed. The last thing you want is to build a building and at the end you find that there are different needs that different from what got built or got designed. So it's important to kind of reach out and have that continuous communication and engagement and genuine soliciting their input to be part of this whole process. At Michigan State University, we've done what we call the Integrated Project Delivery, IPD, and it's the only campus that I'm aware of that have done 2 of those projects. Very, very different way of delivering projects in design and construction. And this slide here that shows the structure of a multi-agreement contract in which the owner gets engaged with the construction manager and the consultants and the contractors, subcontractors, and trade partners. These are players that they get together at the very beginning during design, and they have their experience to be an input to the design team. So we're not designing, coming back and undoing a lot of things because it doesn't meet our budget or meet what we want. This is really a very different way of doing it. It's a huge subject that I think we don't have time to talk about it, but I just wanted to tell you that in this IPD, the change of behaviors of all the players, engaging people at the beginning, have a target cost that everybody aware of and working on together. We put our heads together instead of spending a lot of time wasted on protecting our backs and not looking how can we optimize the projects that we're working on, subject that we maybe we'll discuss in different sessions or a different opportunity. I have over here that's a good example of some of that. This is the American University of Sharjah. This university, as you see it here in phase 1, was built in 11 months. Believe it or not, 11 months. That photo that you see here, 11 months. This is the looks at the at that construction site in June, where the university opened its door in October of the same year. So you can imagine the amount of lean thinking. How can we do this? Of course, a big part of it was trying to look at the prefab, a lot of the components and the systems outside and bringing it and laying it in on site. This was in Sharjah, United Arab Emirates, and the summer over there is really hot. So to try to have more quality control on having some of these products in the factory and coming in and putting in on site was a huge help and success. Not only the ceiling slabs, but all the entire facade of buildings that they would be manufactured in the factory and coming in and being installed on site, which would take few hours, and the whole campus looks was changing by the hour as these materials comes in and help definitely with this whole scheme of the campus. This particular campus here was recognized by Forbes Middle East magazine as the best private school at that part of the world. Just an example of a lot of great success that happened there. We cannot leave the challenges that we're talking about without talking about the current pandemic impact. It's a huge reality. This is the new reality, and how can we live and try to adjust to it? Many universities are now kind of struggling to do what to do next and all of that stuff. A lot of different ways of looking at it, but the most important part is going to be continue to do remote learning. Students will have part or all their learning remotely, and of course, you know that puts a big, huge pressure on campuses and facilities and all of that stuff, and making sure that we are supporting the professors and communicate with their students and all of that. It's a huge challenge because we have in America, we have something, a term that's called going to college. Going to college means that they're going to leave home and go see the rest of the world and meet with people, hear different ideas, they learn about different ideas and build their own future. And doing that remotely is not going to help that a lot. So hopefully that a lot of that will be inside once we go back to what used to be normal. Remote learning, by the way, is going to flourish and is going to be continued and develop further. However, there is no substitute for space. Space is essential for people to interface and interact and to learn. It's part of that learning, college learning process that we all have. Social distancing is going to be a big one. Here at Michigan State University, we try to look at some of the classrooms, they used to house 100 students, and we found out with the social distancing, you only can have 15, 20 students. That's all that you can have. So of course, this is not going to be suitable, inside the buildings, and how you'll be able to use these buildings. Look and what is your process and procedures, inside the buildings and hallways, inside the elevators, signage that tell people what to do and where they are, and some of the new regulations that we need to have there. So that's all is going to be a big part and impact on our campuses. Personal protection would be required, at least for now, till a vaccine is developed and we are out of this time that we're facing right now. Dorms and food services, those are areas that are going to be very challenging. The dorms where students usually share rooms, and how are they going to be dealing with social distancing? Food is always going to be wrapped and be packaged. The whole concept of buffets, of open buffet and all of that stuff, it's going to be stopped for now up until we have a different situation that can we do things differently. HVAC systems, this is an area that's going to be changed tremendously. Picking up and choosing more efficient filtrations, different type of filtrations that can take care of germs and bacteria, and how this can be available inside an existing building, and how you be able to do that. This is all challenges that we need to deal with. Introducing more fresh air, and this is going to continue. I mean, in designing new buildings, this whole notion of how we're dealing with fresh air and mechanical system, and how we'll be able to handle that in different spaces inside the building. Another area is cleaning protocols and disinfection. Where we're going to be doing that, how often, what are the materials that we're using, the products that's going to be used. All of that's going to be a challenge of coming up with protocols that helps everybody. Transportation and pathways that allows a little bit with the social distancing also is going to be a challenge. It's something that we're going to need to look at it. So that's very quickly some of the changes we have there. I look now at some of the budget challenges that we have. For those who work on a campus in facilities side, we always know that you will never have enough money for all what you need to do on your campus. That's why you always have that deferred maintenance list or just-in-time list of items that you need to do to renew your plant or maintain your plant or take care of it. That's why you need to kind of put weight on what's important and what's less important, and kind of set your budgets to allow for that. So this is an inherited thing that happens in every single campus. All campuses, they deal with this whole huge list of deferred maintenance. The second thing is the money available, or the funding available from federal or state funding has dwindled tremendously. So the university are left without that option. It's important that we look in other ways of how can we still can maintain building new buildings, projects that is needed to allow for education or learning or research and all of that stuff with the limited resources that we have. So fundraising became an important part, and those folks who are working in facilities, they can team up very closely to how can we make a successful fundraising, and what is it that we focus on. The best thing, of course, when we do fundraising is look at friends and family, those who have vital interest on how the university is running, how it's look like, how can we excite people about what's happening on campus, the momentum of that of new projects that can bring to this campus. And of course, you cannot find better than those who have a vital interest or would like to see what's the best affairs that can happen for that particular campus. So you end up working very closely with institute advancement or university development to kind of working plans to approach some of those potential donors. I have had situations where we would invite donors actually to construction site before the project is finished. We put the red carpet and walk them through it, and I saw a lot of great reaction of how people get excited about seeing the whole thing before the final product is finished. They feel like they are part of it. They get excited about what's going on and all of that. That was very very good experience. You look at naming opportunities, not just for the entire building, but the entire building would be, but you look into spaces inside, within the building itself, corners, rooms, hallways, areas, and also looking not just all the inside, you look also at outside. We had a ice whale that would collect all the rain from the roofs and kind of comes out outside the building that kind of feed this natural area of landscape. And we were able to find donors that will be interested on that. There are other fundraising tools that we don't have time to talk about, but there are many other tools like, the social media, the person-to-person contact, sometimes would be sweeping a credit card on a form, things like that. There are so many different tools that you just need to kind of tune up with some of those, working with some of these campaigns to provide the best. Another way of looking at funding has been what we call it the P3, public-private partnership, which has been very popular for a while, but not all campuses have utilized that. University are turning into P3. Some of these projects are like student housing, which is really the most common form of P3. Hotels, parking garage, medical office buildings. As you see, all of these projects, all of these potential projects have income, and bringing private sector into that would allow that you secure an income coming in from these projects that can be shared. And after a certain period of time, the entire project goes back to the university. And we'll discuss that in a minute. The University of California, as an example, have done about 65 projects on P3, major projects, not one, during the last 15 years, which is important. Why P3? Budget issues, of course, forcing university to look at creative way of how can we develop our projects on campus with limited funding that we have. P3 enables the university to kind of do these projects off balance sheet basis, allow them to maintain their credits and focus the funding that they have for educational needs and purposes. So that's a big part of it. It's that upfront cash money that the university can use, and by joining a private sector in some of these projects. The P3 allows the projects to be affordable. Take advantage of the skills that private sector would have in developing projects. And I had some of these projects happening in Michigan State University, and can testify to that and see how creative and how tight budgets be able to still accomplish some of major projects. The developer must also make sure that the university will be provided assurance that the quality of the project be developed after the life cycle, after they finish the life cycle and operation and maintenance costs to the university when they receive these projects after a certain period of time. The structure of P3, very quickly here, ground lease is central component of this model. The university would agree on a duration of the lease that minimum would be 20 years. I've known some would be 50 years, 100 years. It all depends on the business plan and the business agreement. Take advantage of tax exemption by joining the public sector or the private sectors together, looking at ways that they can help the cash flow they have the borrowing to make sure that they cover the initial cost, all of that. The developer usually responsible for all of the issues of design, construction, operation, and maintenance for a certain period of time. During this term of lease, usually the nonprofit organization, and nominal amount, they receive a nominal amount of rent to the university. So I want to recap here of where we are. Definitely, we have a lot of challenges in our new facilities on campus in higher education. That's for sure. Changing the way we deliver education has been a major challenge. Lack of available funding, and also emerging demanding lean management and how we run our businesses. There is a new demand how we run businesses on our campuses and what you expect, for the customers and for those who are working for you in these facilities. We talked about a solution of tailoring our planning, design, and construction to the new needs, innovations in finding solutions to all the challenges that we've got there. Current pandemic impact, we talked about the challenges that this brings up here and what would continue, what would be stopped when this all goes away. Adopting lean approaches that can help cutting waste and adding values. That's a big, huge demand, in our campuses now. The human-focused operation. Those who work for you, those who you deal with, not just the end users, reaching out to everybody in your organization genuinely to try to solicit ways of improving what we do and all of that. I'll stop here, and hopefully, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Amr. I'd like to thank Amr for a very insightful and detailed presentation. We'll now move on to the Q&A. We have a few questions in already. Amr, have you utilised BIM methodology in any stage of campus development?
We've been working on that at Michigan State University, and BIM could be the glue that kind of brings everybody together. And I give you a good example that we just did recently in a project where we had the consultants in Seattle and the other coast of the United States distance. So we used BIM to kind of coordinate and communicate with the different parts of the team, and I saw a lot of values on that. Still a lot of development to happen in BIM. In Michigan State, we started to look at and see how can we take that next layer. In addition to doing a project in BIM as a design, how can you take that information and start to take the operation, the maintenance layer on the top of that, take advantage of that. It's a huge area that we found that's still in development, we're still working with it. I checked with other Big Ten universities around us, and they are in the same seat. They see the potentials of that, but they have not moved to that yet, as they're waiting for more development. How can we link to budget? How can we link to estimates? How can we link to maintenance and operation, all of that?
Okay, perfect. Another question here from one of the attendees. What cultural challenges did you face in adopting integrated project delivery?
Number one is work on a campus. You have a lot of stakeholders, a lot of entities on campus that you want to make sure that you get them engaged. And of course, when you deal with IPD, you're not going to be able to train everybody. So you need to kind of focus who's the core team that needs to be part of that training and be part of it. Communication about what's happening and what's going on and what kind of development needs to go on an integral basis. But to try to make sure that that whatever you're doing is making sure that you reach out generally to get the input of those part of the campus, and make sure that before you move to the next phase, that you include and incorporated all the interest or answer all the questions before you do a different phase of your design or your construction.
Okay, great. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about LIPS?
Very quickly, lean in public sector. We look first at what's public sector, and very quickly I'll tell you that it's a different animal when it comes down to the challenges you're having for public sector. In public sector, you serve everybody. You don't have the opportunity to pick and choose who's your customer is. So you're dealing with public money. It's a huge area that kind of people look at it and try to see how can we make it plastic and serving everybody. Big organizations, usually the public sectors, is a huge layers of bureaucracy. Usually that's the case. Big organization, excessive bureaucracy, all of that stuff. Usually overstaffed. There is a lot of areas that shows the challenge that you have in public sector. The issue of corruption worldwide. You'll be shocked to know that 68% of public sector organizations they have some form of corruption, and people kind of concerned about that. So it's not just a notion that's out there; it's a reality that people deal with. But the biggest challenge that I think happening with public sector is you have these elections and you end up with a new leader, and new leader might change the directions of that public sector. You don't have the continuation on a long-term plan. Usually because of the short term of these leaders, they have specific goals and views that might affect how we're running business on the long term. So this is very quickly talk about why public sector. For LIPS itself, it's an international organization that kind of interest in promoting lean principles and practice in public sector organization all over the world. It actually was started in 2007 by Professor Glenn Ballard. Many of you might know him as the co-founder of Lean Construction Institute in the United States. It's been a huge impact of what he's been able to do in the area of lean and all of that stuff. So this particular organization here at the forum that helps that can educate, inform, and inspire lean practice in public sector. And when it talks about who is in public sector that we reach out to, usually government in all levels, and we have agencies in different areas: construction, infrastructure, transportation, higher education, health care. And we have representatives all over the world, as you see here from the map. That's been very fortunate. We have all of these folks involved in the activities of LIPS. And what we do usually is have an annual meeting that we usually have it held in different country every year. And also we provide workshops and training and many conferences in different places. Last year we had in India, we had in Qatar, and we had in planned for Ireland also. So just an example. Collaborate with other organizations. We're not here in competing with others, but really gonna work together to look and make sure that we're trying to carry and achieve that LIPS mission to the community of practice, making sure that every place where LIPS goes, we can create what we call a community of practice. People that they still can continue talking about what they're doing and share that with each other, which I think it's a great opportunity for them to learn that. We have context maps all over the world here, as you see it, almost 6 continents that can represent also the steering committee that we have, as you see it here in the photo. This is very quickly just to make sure that you guys aware of what we're doing, and well, Lips is more than happy to answer any other questions.
That's great, Amar. Thank you. We just have one more question if we have time for. Can you give us an example of some communication strategies you engaged in while dealing with consultants to keep the project on track?
It is so important at the beginning of the project to do what we call it the conditions of satisfactions. Meaning, you sit with the client, with the owner or the end users, and you bring your entire team that's engaged in the project and make sure that you set that term. What would make this project successful? And based on that, you take that as a benchmark for many decisions that's being made. If the budget is an issue, then you almost, the entire team is focused that this is part of conditions of satisfaction. So if the time to finish the project is completed is a part of it. So they make sure that the team, the owner, those who are involved in the project understand exactly what are the framework that we're working with, and remind them throughout the projects, this is where we are, this is where we're heading, and the team become focused on that. In the IPD projects, IPD projects that we had a great focus from the entire team. I was really surprised that the architect, the sub-consultants, and how they work together and make sure that they're not sacrificing quality. They try to get the best, but they understand also that we have a target cost that we're working with. So understanding these conditions of satisfactions, the goals of this project understood by everybody, and everybody signed on it. So if somebody changes their mind, we always can get back and say, these are the terms that we agreed on and signed off for.
Okay, perfect. And we're just out of time. Again, thank you so much for your presentation. A copy of this webinar will be sent out to everyone who attended. We will send out the information shortly via LinkedIn, Twitter, and newsletter for the next webinar, which will take place on the 16th of September. The topic of September's webinar is TAC, the Foundation for Technology Revolution in Construction, and that will be presented by Janos Louis from BMW Group. Thank you again from Amar and myself on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. You can follow Lean Construction Ireland on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and through the website, leanconstructionireland.ie. Thanks again, Amar. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.